Howdy folks, we're looking at Edge Magazine issue 47, released, July 1997, and discussing the future of interactive entertainment. I don't have the CD that was accompanied with this magazine, but that's no worries, still plenty to talk about. A not so bad looking cover this time, and what's funny is that you see this eye here. If you open up, you'll see that it's actually the eye of the Tyrannosaurus Rex here. So that's kind of cool. Yeah, we're going to be heading to Acclaim and discussing Arc 2, which Edge would later on give a 9, which was rather high. So yeah, here you can see what's in the CD. If it gets a bit sharp, a lot of pre-screens and looks at arcade games. Interview with Peter Molyneux and William Latham. I don't know who that guy is. So the opening column is obviously about Acclaim and how they have companies like Iguana and Probe, but also about how the magazine is using the CD-ROM technology now, which is kind of futuristic. This is mid-1997. By now, a fair share of readers had computers which could read PC CDs, ROMs. The contents. Oh yeah, so the big news is that the M2 is going the way of the dumpster. Pretty much everything you could know about the M2 is listed on these 2 pages. There's a list of dates and announcements, what they did. Some talk about why it went wrong. There's a picture of a prototype, even though at least there's drawn. They were having pictures of one. Some games are like D2 are mentioned that might have been released. IMSA Racing was another one, and of course Crystal Chronicles, I think it was. We saw that earlier. That looked big, but all almost for nothing. From what I understand is that some of the M2 technology was used for arcades, but not games, but certain machines. Sega and Bandai decide not to merge, mostly because Bandai is doing better with the selling of their Tamagotchi, and Sega is hitting some rough times now, with the Saturn not doing as well as the PlayStation. Here we have the game Calm, which is made by Tiger, kind of like a Game Boy, but you could go on the internet. For what reason, I do not know. I thought it looked really good back then, and I thought that it would replace the Game Boy. I mean, the Game Boy had been around for 6-7 years, and almost 8 actually, and it was about time a new handheld was being released. Okay, some talk about the next E3 coming around. 1,500 new games were going to be shown. This would be the third E3. And so there's already some speculation about the new Zelda, Castlevania. Electronic Arts acquires Maxis, who would later on make The Sims. Let's see, again, the contents of the CD I don't have. Okay, what do we have here? I didn't read these articles, but apparently it's something about an art exhibition, something with games, and Sony gathering tribes? I don't get it. So the good news is that force feedback in the joypads is cool. Saturn is being sold for £100. That's nice. And the bad news is that Lara Croft is on the cover of The Face. That was a big thing. And the 64DD being delayed. Here's Philip Michel, who made The Hobbit and Penetrator. And there's some talk about his career, and yeah, he's still working. And we'll see more of him, I think, later. Which games are they playing at the moment? Runabout, Puzzle Bobble, Time Crisis, Commando, 1942, and Rapid Racer. So that's what Edge was into at the moment. Okay, so there's a CD-ROM on the market about Oasis, the British band. Neon Genesis Evangelion is released on video. It's a really long series, so that would be quite expensive. Yeah, an AMD computer. Again, some bands I don't know. Okay. A couple of books, one called Big Brother and the other called Possible Worlds, but neither were really interesting. Hey, what's going on the internet? Well, Edge discusses some of the websites concerning Nintendo, comparing the official ones like Nintendo Powers, which they say is very good, but Nintendo Power doesn't say anything negative about the company. Well, there are unofficial websites that have almost as quick news, but they're at least objective and will complain about, for instance, the 64DD being delayed. There's a program for making your own football sim, including the stadium, which you can build. Don't know what the name is. It's called Soccer Nation. Okay, Japan, what's going on? Let's see. Oh, I haven't read this either, but a lot is meant. We can see the how well things are selling. So if this can get sharper, you might want to look into these numbers and lists. Sorry, I didn't read this. Something. Oh yeah, I did actually. This is about that game called LSD, which is like a not really much of a game, but a visual simulator. So that was rather artistic at the time. Okay, Peter Molyneux. I wonder where he is because there are these heads on the wall. It's kind of freaky. And there's a lot of talk about how he left Bullfrog to create what would be called Red Eye, I think, or Red Faction. Well, that would later be, I don't know what happened with that, but I thought he went to Lionhead to make Fable. Yeah, there's talk about how he was extra nice for saying a year in advance that he would be leaving Bullfrog, but that it hurt his future career because Electronic Arts? Did they own Bullfrog? Anyhow, he wasn't allowed to talk that much with his colleagues because Electronic Arts was afraid that he would be recruiting colleagues to also jump ship to Red Eye, and that hampered his work on Dungeon Keeper. But he was honest. He said, "I won't leave until Dungeon Keeper is finished," and he worked really hard for it. There's some talk about the industry where it's going, and he's a bit pessimistic about the future about the consoles. And that's pretty much it. On to the alphas. Lots of pictures. If you recognize the games, all the power to you. I don't really feel like pointing them out this time because a lot of them won't be released or weren't interesting. Interactive Songbook for Oasis, remember that? Okay, Joint Strike Fighter, made by the Norwegian company we saw earlier. And this is at the time, a very good-looking simulator. Got pretty good scores, even though it wasn't what everybody wanted to play. And Edge loves the graphics engine. Omicron. This is a cult classic. It's a kind of an action-adventure with a lot of different genres combined. Shooting, adventure, obviously, and fighting. Mostly known for having David Bowie and having a very authentic style. Released by Eidos, made by Quantic Dream, and so some people loved it at the time, and some people said it wasn't very well done. Well, we'll be seeing this in future issues and also Time Extend. Lamborghini 64 by Titus, not as bad as Superman 64, but still not a very good racing game. Fight Unlimited 2, looking even better than Part 1 by Looking Glass. I don't know how it otherwise improves upon Part 1. There wasn't that much information in this article either, despite taking 2 pages, but fantastic pictures. Plane Crazy, a racing game with all kinds of planes and mostly about dodging things. Released by, let's see, it was for the PC, and somewhat average scores. Again, 2 pages released for a game that hardly anybody ever remembered. Okay, now we're going to look at SETA with a T, and they were working on 2 titles. One of them was not released. That would be called Rev Limit, kind of like Gran Turismo, but more like Ridge Racer, I guess, for Nintendo 64. And they worked on Wild Choppers, which was released but got rather bad scores. So they put a lot of work into these 2 Nintendo 64 games, but nothing really came that much out of it. Japanese company. Here's a company. Where are they from? Scotland. They were able to pick up the license for Earthworm Jim, and they made Earthworm Jim 3D, which was a below average platform game. It took a while to release. Earthworm Jim goes through all these different dreams. He does a lot of funny things, but the graphics look kind of weird, and it didn't have quite the humor as the original 2D games, nor the gameplay. So there's also talk about a game called Heads, H-E-D-Z, which was supposed to be mostly a multiplayer online game. You could collect heads from your opponents and use their abilities, I guess kind of like Mario Odyssey, but not a big game, so that never took off. Here's a company mostly known for their graphics. What's the name of it again? Computer Artworks, and they have this game called Evolva, which sounds a lot like a Spore. You take over the abilities of your opponents and use their DNA of sorts to create your own creatures. So, didn't play very well, but highly original concept, especially for its time. And that's what the reviews also said. A lot of company profiles. This company is Broderbund. Are they German? I'm not sure where they came from. So they're showing quite a lot of games. First there's Take No Prisoners, which is like a top-down version of Quake. Not that very good. There's War Breeds, which is a very weird, futuristic Mad Max-like RTS. Warlords 3, they're being showed, which is like a turn-based RTS. I kind of like the graphics. It looks very 16-bit. None of these games were really big, except, of course, they also worked on Myst. And here they talk about the sequel, Riven, and how the graphics engines it required were state of the art. There's also talk about Journeyman Project 3, but I don't think that was released. So, it's an American company, by the way, in San Rafael. Can I get a sharp image, please? So yeah, more talk about how Riven will be a lot like Myst, because hey, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Even though there was criticism of Myst, Edge only gave it a 6. I thought it was a really boring game. Looked pretty and kind of interesting backstory, but mostly just totally random puzzles. Another company profile, Fox Interactive. They had this CD called Virtual Springfield, which lets you interact with all kinds of elements of The Simpsons, and a game. Well, not much of a game, but nevertheless something interactive called the X-Files, and you could get this program would send you emails to make it extra immersive and all that. But there are not many details about how the game actually worked. It was mostly about learning more about the X-Files lore. Fox also working on Croc, which would become a fairly well-selling platforming game. Considering what they were able to do with the PlayStation, it was programmed well, but other than that, a rather lackluster platforming adventure game, not as good as Mario 64. I wonder how many sequels Croc got. Not sure. So, another studio profile, Acclaim. Not doing well at the moment because they stuck too long in the 16-bit era. Now they're working really hard on 64 and 32-bit technology. Most of all, Turok 2, which will feature a more interesting level design, multiplayer, better graphics, even though using less polygons. They're really proud of that. PC version of Turok, and we'll see more of this game later on. Also working on sports games, NFL Quarterback Club and All-Star Baseball, which weren't big sellers, I believe. Iguana working on Shadow Man. That would be a cult hit for Nintendo 64. Also based on a comic, just like Turok. And they talk about how they chose this character. And a lot of talk about the graphics, of course. Obviously, the Nintendo 64 game wouldn't look as good as the pictures here. Also talk about Forsaken, which was on the PC and now being released for the Nintendo 64, a shooting game. Probe, working on, what was it again? Again, they're working on Forsaken, and also, I believe, on Extreme G. Yeah, on Extreme G Racing, which a lot of people compare to Wipeout, but it uses these kind of motorcycles, and this game looks really interesting. It's Batman and Robin for Nintendo 64, and it looks fantastic. I can hardly believe these are Nintendo 64 graphics. I should try to find out if this was ever released. Okay, and finally they have Sculptured, who are working on an NFL game called Breakaway 98. Okay, oh yeah, there's also Ultra Soccer. So Acclaim, a lot of titles being released. Only one, Extreme G was okay, but Turok 2 was pretty good. Hey, A Little Big Adventure 2, and that has another name in the US, but I can never remember it. It's kind of an abstract name, something like Critical or something. But if you want to look at this game, look up the word Twinson's Odyssey, you'll find it. And here's the sequel. Better graphics. You could turn the camera, but this made the controls even worse. And everybody complains about the controls of this game. Still, quite a compelling adventure game. So if you look past the awkward controls, it has a lot of character. Edge gives it a 7. But a lot of reviews are around the high 80s, just like the original game. And yeah, cult classic. Not very big in the United States, but Europe, a lot of people liked it. Overblood, rather below average survival horror game. Edge likes it though, giving it a 7 because of its atmosphere. It's made by River Hill Soft and released by EA. I never heard of it before, so that didn't become a hit. V-Rally did become a hit and start a series made by Infogrames, the French company, and a very arcade-like racing game. Not as good as Sega Rally, if you ask me, but still the best rally game the PlayStation had to offer until they released Colin McRae. Edge gives it an 8. Okay, Run and Bat also had another name in the US. I can't come up with it now. And this was kind of a pretty cool racing game where you had all kinds of cars, and it was mostly about dodging and trying to stay on the track. Very frantic. Edge really liked it. They gave it a 7 out of 10. Most reviews gave it also around a 7. So for Edge, a 7 is what for most other magazines would be like an 8, 8.5. So yeah, maybe you want to look into this. It's not as quirky as GTI Club, but it's probably the closest thing you can get on the PlayStation. Wild Arms was a hit. Edge gives it 8 out of 10. Very much like Final Fantasy games. Edge says that they copy a lot of elements, and it plays a lot like an RPG from 1995. Well, that was the height of the RPG rage with Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VI, so why not? Yeah, everybody liked it. At the time, the best RPG for the PlayStation. So Wild Arms getting an 8 here. Conquest Earth was beloved by Edge. They gave it an 8 out of 10. They really liked the graphics, and I have to agree. But I don't know, why else did they like it? Because it had a fast pace. But for some reason, I looked at other reviews briefly, and people seem to complain about a lot of little things. Not only bugs, but bad controls. And the average grade, according to Moby Games, was like a 5 or a 6. So Edge likes it more than other people. Yet another RTS being released in the mid-90s. Ace Combat 2 gets a 6 out of 10, being a more thorough game for the home consoles than the original Ace Combat, which was more like an arcade game. So there's more to do. although still not that much. So it gets a 6 for the PlayStation 1. Arcade games, Police Stars. There's hardly any information about this game on the internet, but it's Konami using the M2 technology for a game. It looks pretty good, actually. Very smooth. Although, yeah, it kind of looks like a Dreamcast game when it comes to graphics, and it's a shooter. So, you fly around shooting things. This game looked really impressive. Jurassic Park 2. The Lost World, the arcade game where you shoot things, shoot dinosaurs, and it used the Model 3 board, and it was quite an arcade hit for the time. By then, arcades were in decline, but this one was quite popular. I still come across it every once in a while. Okay. Let's look at the adverbs for career opportunities. Yeah. Still the same one. Okay, the gallery. So pretty pictures coming from all kinds of games. This looks like Little Big Adventure 2. Yeah. We have, what was this game again? Alien Earth. The sequel, the quasi-sequel to Shadowrun. Queen the Eye. This was an interesting multimedia game featuring the music by Queen. Okay, the Retro View has really bad pictures of Bomb Jack. I wonder why they chose Bomb Jack. Probably because they we're looking into MAME, the emulator, which is now the default emulator for old arcade games. And Edge already was able to look at these games. Bomb Jack being a classic where you jump around getting the bombs in each level. And released in 1984, had really good graphics for the time. And a nice and simple gameplay, kind of like Puzzle Bobble. You had one level and you jumped around grabbing things. Okay, so develop, very wordy again, a whole article about DirectX, this time being version 5, how it slightly improves graphics, especially at a low level of programming language. Really nerdy stuff. Soft Image being purchased by Microsoft. So here's some talk about how Microsoft will be competing with CGI, Silicon Graphics. I don't know who actually won. I don't know. I'd like to believe that the Unreal Engine became the thing to use games for. And Gods is a PC development studio to make games, also 3D games. I don't know if that was ever used. Okay, so the letters. People complaining about Edge and their bias towards Nintendo 64, of course. Complains about 3D cards not working properly. One person complaining about how Edge featured a CD and seems to be trying to get more mainstream audience. And this reader saying, "No, please, Edge, stay for the for certain readers." Well, Edge says, "Well, we can make more content if we have more readers." And they're still around, Edge, so they're doing something right. Most of the magazines back then have folded by now. And Edge is still going okay. I don't think they're doing very well at the moment, but they're still around. Some questions about when the 64DD will release and which games. Yeah. So, and the Q&A, somebody asking for a good flight sim joystick for the PlayStation 1. Can you believe it? And how to play arcade games on a PC. Next month we'll be looking at the Lost World arcade game and DreamWorks, who made the game. And of course the E3, which will be the 3rd edition, and again showing off many big games. Acclaim made the graphics for this Turok. You see Edge being written here. And also these graphics for the magazine, looking really impressive. And that was issue 47. We're almost in issue 50. So thanks for watching again. And it's December the 5th today. I hope to make the first 50 issues of Edge by the end of the year. So thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. See you around.